So, Doug, for this year
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, that's a week away. A week away.
Yeah,
because we're
Bah Humbug. Was it Dickens that talked about Bah Humbug and Scrooge?
Yeah. He talked about him negatively if you read the story.
Well, of course, he had redemption, too, and then nobody kept Christmas like Mr. Scrooge. And Tiny Tim did not die.
Well, now your spoilers here.
Yeah, they don't have to read the book. Well, we have another repeat guest. Captain Jeremy Spain of the
Although he
US
wasn't
Army.
a captain at the time.
That's right. He's gone on his chaplaincy training and is a captain with the 101 Air Assault
Of the United States Army.
Yeah, no longer just airborne, and he's got some really incredible stories to sell, and so I'm really
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, see my friend back. Disclosure, we're friends with Jeremy.
Merry Christmas. Welcome to the third chair, and our guest this week is Jeremy Spain, and across from me is Peter, and we're coming. Jeremy, I know you're stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
We did tell him he's a special Christmas episode, didn't we?
Well, now he knows.
Doug is certainly dressed the part.
Well, one of us had to. So Jeremy, where do you live? Because I know that it's actually, you can live in Tennessee or Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, Merry Christmas to you both as well. And so I actually live on the Kentucky side of Fort Campbell. It's really funny because, the majority of the post of Fort Campbell is in Tennessee, but yet the post office box is in Kentucky. So the entire post has a Kentucky address, even though the majority of the post is in Tennessee. So, about 2 miles from here is where the Tennessee border is. We're in Tennessee all the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We consider ourselves Kentuckians now.
So, when you were here about a year ago, you talked about joining the Army as a chaplain, and as the people could see, you succeeded in that. Can you tell us how that story went since we last talked to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I would have asked you guys when we last spoke. When was that last time?
That was
had
actually
I already been picked up for chaplain or not? I think I had.
No, that was almost 2 years ago because we filmed you in January, and then your episode was actually a 4th of July episode, so a whole lot happened from the time we first had you on the episode to the time you actually became a chaplain.
Yeah, I'm not even sure you were ordained as a priest then.
I don't think you were, if I remember correctly.
You're right. No, I wasn't ordained until that April in an Anglican church to the priesthood. And then that June was the board for the Army chaplain course. So, at the point that we last spoke, we were, I was kind of moving in that direction, right? Jumping through all these hoops, getting all the paperwork lined up and all the T's crossed and I's dotted. The final summation of that process was a chaplain board where all these packages with all your paperwork go in front of a board of chaplains, and they select you or don't select you to become an active duty chaplain. Well, I found out like June 25th-ish sometime that my package actually had been selected for active duty chaplaincy, and praise God for that. And then like that September, I had like 2 months to prepare before I left for Chibolic, which is the Chaplain Basic Officer Leadership Course, which is down at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I spent 3 months there without the family, going through kind of like, it's like a basic training for chaplains. Chaplains don't have to go through an ROTC program, or they don't have to go through an officer commissioning program because of their professional degrees, right? They have a master's in divinity usually. They're going to have 2 years post-MDiv, full-time ministry experience. It's just pretty extensive. So they come in as commissioned officers already. It'd be the same for doctors, lawyers, nurses, I believe.
So are you a general now?
No, not quite. Actually, I don't think I wish to be ever a general. That takes 25 plus years to be a general. I came in as a first lieutenant, and about 6 6 months in, I promoted to captain. We'll stay a captain for about 10 years, 8 to 10 years, depending on how well you do in the military.
Yeah,
or in
Moses
the Army.
never got beyond captain.
Moses
I'm
never.
confused of what rank Moses was, but
I don't know. He was in Pharaoh's court. I don't know if he had some kind of rank, but I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, and so what was this chaplain program? Was this like still getting up and running and doing push-ups and having drill sergeants yell at you and those kinds of things?
It was pretty close, for the first, so it was 3 months, like I mentioned, and for the first month, it was called the direct commissioning course. So that course is, we couldn't have our cars. We couldn't drive anywhere. We had to walk everywhere. We couldn't leave post. But it wasn't like boot camp. I was in the Navy for 9 years. I went to a Navy boot camp for 9 weeks. And, there you eat, sleep, and, do everything else in a berthing with other sailors. Your life is not your own. And this direct commissioning course, it was kind of like a gentleman's course, right? Like in the evenings, I got off. I stayed in a hotel. I got to go back to. I could call my wife in the evenings. I could go out and do things. Like I wasn't restricted like I would have been, or like I was when I was in Navy boot camp. So, yeah, it required us getting up early in the mornings, usually about 6 o'clock, 5:30. We'd have to form up, and then we'd stand around for half hour, an hour. And then we'd go over to the PT field. We did have some 11 Bravos, which are infantry men. We happen to have men, but the infantry branch, who are the NCOs over us, which is a non-commissioned officer. And the NCOs are what make up the backbone of the Army, right? They're the ones who really get things done and run the Army. So we rely a lot on them to train us in Army isms and to become better soldiers.
Mm-hmm. I looked actually online at the outline for this course for all 12 weeks, and it looked like there was like a lot of reading and a lot of kind of reference manuals that you had to at least be aware of. Did you find that to be the case, or they just put that in there to scare us civilians?
I think a big thing, a big part of being a leader in the Army is you got to know Army policy. You have to know Army directives. You have to know how the Army functions. And so part of the chaplain corps of this course is teaching you these doctrines and these policies so that way you can get out into the Army and start doing your job from the get-go. They expect you to already know how to do pastoral work, but they want to teach you how to do that pastoral ministry in an Army context, and they do that through learning through policy, learning these manuals. Was it extensive reading? It was nothing compared to seminary. Seminary was exhausting.
Yeah, but that was like, how long, like 5 years or something?
Yeah, seminary for me was 4.
Yeah, that's...
Most people complete it in 3. Some people can take much longer, but it's 90 credit hours of master level work, so it's no small matter. And the level of work, while it was intense at times, it didn't really compare to seminary level education.
So when you got to Fort Campbell and you started doing your work, was the training at Fort Jackson adequate, or did you have to learn a lot more when you got to Fort Campbell, and how helpful was it?
Yeah, I guess to say whether or not it was adequate or not. Do you have any chaplain listeners? Because I don't want to offend the chaplain corps here. I don't want to say anything that will get me in trouble. It's like, you've heard of drinking out of a fire hose, right?
Yeah.
Like they throw so much at you, just with all the stuff that they want you to know as a chaplain, that you get little bits and pieces of it, and you don't really start to learn what any of this means until you get out into the field, right? And so you're like boots on ground, actually doing ministry and chaplain work. So, was it adequate? It was adequate for us to function at that basic level. I think it could be improved in a lot of ways.
But
and I think,
but the experience you're talking about is really common. like doctors do 4 years of medical school, but then it's really not until you do your internship year that you really feel like you've become a doctor. I think the kind of thing you're talking about is really common.
Yeah, it is common, and that's what I found, because I took a lot of Army courses, and I found the same thing. They gave you the basics, but you really learned when you got out into the real world from the classroom, whoa, this is different. And then you remember some stuff and like, oh, I can apply that here. But it was like drinking out of a fire hose. That was a great description.
And you know what? We're going to continue this discussion when we come right back. Welcome back to the Third Chair. I'm Peter, that's Doug, and we're here with Captain Jeremy Spain, who we've had on a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago.
Captain United States Army Jeremy Spain.
Captain United States Army Chaplain Brigade, or what, Jeremy?
I think just Chaplain.
Battalion. So you explained to me once, and I didn't totally understand. Chaplains in the United States Army are not allowed to carry or shoot firearms. That creates some ethical dilemmas. But you, as I understand, have the opportunity at some point, like, to train with the guys that like jump out of helicopters and stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so just to state for the first part of that question is, chaplains are considered non-combatants. We don't carry a weapon at all, and it's something that the U.S. does to keep us in that non-combatant status role. So when we go to war, if we ever get captured, we're not really considered prisoners of war. They have to release us, or unless we're providing spiritual support to like prisoners of war, we can then be retained. We're known as, I think it's called retained personnel, but not for war. So we don't carry weapons, but everything that I do as a chaplain, I'm encouraged to be out there where the soldiers are, to have a ministry of presence, to do what they do. I've been told that the greatest place for a chaplain is where it sucks the most. And there's a lot of just terrible things that soldiers have to do day in and day out. Mm-hmm. It's raining outside, and we're out in the field, and there's tons of mud and muck, and it's cold and it's wet. Well, is the chaplain going to be very efficient if he's back in his office, not out in the field with those soldiers, or is he going to be more effective where they are? Well, he's going to be more effective where he is or where she is. So,
do you think if you do that, they're more likely to perhaps listen to advice when you speak encouraging advice about their life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to just building those relationships, and when you build those relationships, spending time with them. Mm-hmm. When they see you, they begin to trust you. When they get to know you, that you're just some dude like them, they're more willing and apt to share about their life experiences. Mm-hmm. And then when you build up some of that rapport, some of that trust, then they're going to be more willing maybe to accept the advice that you have, or to come to you with the questions about deeper things. Mm-hmm. If they don't know you, especially I have found with infantry, if they don't know you, they're not going to talk to you, and they're not going to open up about those deeper things that are percolating underneath, and you're not going to be very effective. But one of the things that we do here with the 101st, getting to the second part of your question there, is we're an air assault division. We're the 101st Airborne Division. We're no longer airborne. That's a common mistake for a lot of people that they might make. I made that before I got here. I chose to come here thinking, oh man, I'm going to go jump out of an airplane. I don't like the idea of jumping out of airplanes. That's a fear of mine. I don't like flying, but I'm going to face my fear, go to the 101st Airborne, jump out of planes, and get it over with. Well, I get here, and I find out it's an air assault division. We use helicopters to move our units behind enemy lines and assault behind enemy lines. And we don't move just personnel. We move all of our equipment. We can move whole brigades. We're talking 6, 7, 8,000 people through an air assault where we go in behind enemy lines and we then, cut off supplies or, rout the enemy somehow, do things like that. But one of those things that we have to do, we have an air assault training compound here. They call it the 10 hardest days in the Army, and it's air assault school. And I experienced, if I could compare anything like boot camp with my experience as being a chaplain, that probably came closest to the boot camp experience. They didn't care if I was a chaplain or not. I just had a number on my helmet, and I was known as number 126 of whatever class number.
Get your butt out the door, 126.
126, chaplain.
So were you jumping out of perfectly safe helicopters to some dangling line that I think of the movie Black Hawk Down, where the guy like missed the rope and fell out of the helicopter.
Fell out of the helicopter, yeah. So, we spent most of that week not doing anything with helicopters. But at the culmination of the training, we were able to go up in a Black Hawk, and it went straight up, and we had one jump out. That was it. That's all we did.
So how high were you off the ground? How high was the helicopter off the ground when you jumped?
Maybe 60 feet.
So that's quite a...
Wow.
So I mean, how did you break your fall then, or?
Well, you rappel on a rope. So you learn earlier in the week. You learn how to rappel down a tower, and you spend a lot of time rappelling. And part of the tower, you do some of those rappels with a backing, so you're just kind of jumping down. But towards the end of it, there's no platform. You have to kick out from the platform and make sure you get out far enough and drop far enough to where when that swings back, you don't hit your head on the top of the platform. Because the same is true with an aircraft. When they tell you to kind of do like an L shape out, right? So you kind of lean out from the helicopter like this, and then you have to like jump out far enough and release the rope at the right amount of time, so you're falling when that rope catches, and you don't come up and hit your head on the wheel or the foot guard.
Sure. Oh my goodness. And so what is next for you then, this year? What kinds of things will you focus on in the Army?
I think for this year, it's just been really a year of grace. I've been trying to be gracious towards myself. Every new job that you learn, you really should give yourself about a year's worth of grace and time to learn, to apply the things that you're picking up, and to, realize that everything you do, you don't know everything. You don't know the culture of the unit that you're with or the company that you're with. And so this has just been a learning year for me, to learn how to be a better chaplain, to be a better soldier, how to be a better staff officer. Because one of the things that's different with other branches, in some ways, is that a chaplain is both a chaplain and a staff officer. So I have chaplain duties, I have religious support duties that I have to support for the soldiers, but I'm also a staff officer. So I have certain responsibilities that require me to operationalize the products that I'm doing for religious support. Sometimes chaplains come in thinking it's just going to be ministry. I just want to be out with the boys. I just want to be out with the soldiers. I just want to have this ministry of presence. But they fail to realize that a big part of your job is actually, as a staff officer, I'm advising the command on their decisions and how that impacts morale and religion and religious freedom. Or, I'm getting embedded into our operation team, our S3 shop, and telling them, hey, I got this event coming up, this prayer breakfast. I need to put this out in one of our operational orders or a fragmentary order where it lets the commands know about this event. And so I'm just not flying solo out there. So there's two sides to being a chaplain, right? There's you got the staff officer role, but then you also have the religious leader role.
Sure.
And you got to have both of those down.
Sure.
So learning how to do both of those, because you don't really learn. You learn some of the staff officer piece, but you go through Tribolic so quickly that you're learning on the ground, and it's like a lot of times, especially the first 6 months, I felt like I was sinking. It was hard for me to stay afloat, but now I feel like I'm treading water a little bit, and so just continuing to learn, continuing to improve, and especially with the operational process. I'm not a great personally. I don't use a calendar that well. I'm not a good planner, so operationalizing my events.
And the Army likes to plan.
For me.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, I'm going to give you a thought to think about before we go to the next break. You told me about a book that had talked about a unit in Iraq that committed some atrocities, and after reading it, you had wondered where the chaplains may have played or not played a role in that. Do you know the book I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's called Black Hearts.
Yes. When we come back, we'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and particularly how that's affected your vision of how you want to be a chaplain to perhaps preventing something like that ever happening. And we're going to come right back. Real people, real stories, real life. We're looking for guests. We're looking for you here on the third chair. I'm Peter, that's Doug, and how many different ways can we have guests?
Oh, at least 3. We can have them here in the studio in Colorado Springs. We've had guests all the way from LA on Zoom, and we have gone on location, and we got our 3rd one already in the planning phase.
Awesome. Send us an email and we'll get you on the show. Welcome back to the third chair. I'm Peter. He is Christmas Doug, and we're here with
It's
Captain.
Christmas time.
It's Christmas time. Merry Christmas.
Non-Christmas Doug
Yeah.
is over here. I'm the grumpy gnome.
I always enjoy the movie Elf. I watch it every year, once or twice. And
That's a documentary, isn't it?
yeah, it could be. So we're back with Jeremy, and it's a little bit of a dark question because I know that you and I have talked about this before. You were telling me about this book that outlined a unit in Iraq where some things mental health wise really went bad, and some soldiers, I guess, were involved in some inappropriate killing, and it had made you wonder sort of where were the chaplains, how would this affect me as a chaplain. Take a few moments to talk about how you processed that book and what you learned.
Yeah, so the book was called Black Hearts, and it was about a infantry unit in Iraq back in 2006. And there was a few soldiers. Well, there was several. The battalion itself just had some dysfunction within it, according to the book. And some of the things that the soldiers ended up doing were just very questionable. They raped and killed a 13-year-old girl, and it was very sad. And I can just remember asking myself, where was the chaplain during all this? Because the book and the way it's presented, they don't ever mention the chaplain until towards the end of the book. And one of the things as a chaplain, we want to be doing is helping prevent atrocities like that by getting people to think through some of their actions, by going out and checking in with the morale of the unit to ensure that everyone is somewhat healthy and or at least processing in healthy ways. And this unit had experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of death. Lots of members, lots of soldiers had experienced. They were killed by roadside bombs and IEDs and all of that. So it was understandable. But they were stretched thin with personnel, and they had a mission to accomplish. and the soldiers were just continuously put out into harm's way without having an outlet to express themselves, I think. And I thought that it would have been a good opportunity for the chaplain to be out there asking them questions, getting to know what's on their hearts and minds, and what's happening internally, so that way they can advise the commander and the either the company commander or the battalion commander, hey sir, hey ma'am, this stuff's going on and you need to be aware of it. And hopefully the command listens to that. I'm just an advisor, ultimately. At the end of the day, the commander can say, well, thanks, chap, I appreciate that, but we got other things going on, and they make their own decisions.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, my job is to advise the command on these are the effects. This is what can result with a fallout. And so for me, I think it really encouraged me to be courageous. Someday I might be called to be out there in the middle of a battle, in the middle of war, and we might have soldiers nearing their breaking point, seeing the enemy as less than human. And I need to be out there with those soldiers, facing my fear of I might get shot, I might die, I might get blown up, I might lose limbs. And I can't let the fear of those things that happen get in the way of my calling to minister to soldiers, to be a light in a dark place, because war is dark, and to ensure as best as I can that they have the resources and tools to be resilient in that space.
That's a really good point, but it also makes me wonder, though. I mean, are chaplains during times of war required to go out and make field visits, or can a chaplain say, I'm going to stick right behind the lines here where it's nice and safe, and not go out with my chaplain's assistant?
My comment is there's nowhere nice and safe when you go overseas.
Good chaplains will be where their soldiers are. So, a chaplain should not be, if they truly have God's calling on their heart and they're following that calling, they're not going to be concerned about their lives. They're going to be more concerned about the lives of their soldiers. Now, I want to go home. I have a family. I have 4 kids. I want to see them at the end of the day. But I truly believe that I'm called to this ministry, and I go where the soldiers are. Yes, chaplains probably can stay away from battle, especially in coin environments like Iraq and Afghanistan. They can stay over on the base and not have to go out and do those patrols. You can probably get away with that. As we move into different types of warfare, like large combat type warfare, like World War II style warfare, that'll be less likely, right? You're going to be out there where the battalion is. You're going to be out on the front lines, so you're not going to have the chance to get away. Now, you might not be out on the front line, right? You're going to be back with battalion staff, but you're still going to be out in harm's way. And as a chaplain, you got to get out where the soldiers are, because they're not going to be able to get back to you, right? Mm-hmm. Are you meeting their spiritual needs if you're not going out there to meet them there? No, you're failing as a chaplain then, in my opinion.
No.
And I have to say that I don't. What would be the right comment here? That these remarks are all my own. I do not represent the Army in any way, or the DoD, or anything like that. These are my remarks, Jeremy Spain. I'm not speaking for the Army here.
We will put that disclaimer up as well, that this is the opinion of the guest and does not necessarily represent the official opinion of the Army or the DoD.
Yeah.
Now, if the general says something and it's going to affect morale, do you have a plan then? Or do you try to develop a plan like, I got to keep an eye on this, or watch for these signs and warn, staff and commanders if it starts to happen?
Yeah, I mean, you want to be paying attention to the orders that are released. I don't work for a general. I mean, the division has a general, but there's another chaplain, a division chaplain, who works for him. I work for a battalion commander, so he's a lieutenant colonel. And we'll get orders from higher headquarters that will trickle down. But at every echelon, there's going to be a chaplain assisting that higher commander every step of the way. So they're going to be looking out for some of the things that might affect lower echelons as well. And then once it trickles down to the battalion level, I'm going to be there to assist my commander to ensure that if there are things that might lead to issues, that I could then advise him on. And yeah, I'm going to be paying attention. One of the things that I do in assessing morale is I get out and I ask soldiers, how's morale? How are you doing? You know, when you hear about us deploying to such and such a place, or when you hear about another field exercise, how does that make you feel? Oh, chap, you know, this just sucks. You know, we're so busy. We're always out in the field. You know, then I can go back and tell the commander, hey, some of the soldiers think this. And I think good commanders will take your advice and take it seriously. You know, some commanders do not value the chaplain corps.
So is the chaplain? Do you have two bosses in a way? Do you have the chaplains that work, you know, for the general? I mean, do you report to them as well as to the commander of the battalion?
So yeah, I have two chain of commands essentially, right? I have an operational chain of command and then a functional chain of command. My functional chain of command is like my chaplain corps chain of command. So I work for a brigade chaplain, but he just kind of oversees me. He's a resource, or she. They're resources for us. They kind of function kind of like a bishop, right? In the Anglican Church, they're kind of like overseers of the brigade chaplains. But they have a small role to play in promotion, but not much. In way of a write-up and influence on like what kind of rating you get. But then I have the operational chain of command. So my XO and my battalion commander, you know, I work directly for them. So I'm at their disposal.
You can think about this, and we'll get back if you can answer it. So there's other battalions who work for this general. Do you get together with their chaplains and, you know, try to feel them? Well, I was thinking more of a work thing. You know, fill them out and see, you know, like trade ideas and trade stories and ask for help and, you know, and see if they're seeing the same thing. So when you get back, if you could answer that question, and then maybe Peter will ask you to party one.
Party in the USA when we come right back.
Welcome back to the third chair. We have Peter, the party guy,
Woo!
but didn't wear red for Christmas.
I got little red stripes.
Oh yeah.
Peter's new name is the Grinch.
This, call me
we have
Stripey.
Jeremy, and I was, you know, you talked before our break about, you know, the chain of command, but also you have other chaplains at the same level as you, and I mean that can be an asset too. Can you talk about your relationship with them?
Yeah, so we all work within a brigade, and then there's several brigades within a division, and several divisions within a corps, and it just kind of keeps going up from there. But here, within my brigade, the brigade that I work for, we have a brigade commander, and then there's 7, I think, battalions. I can't remember the number, full number, but many battalions, and each of those battalions has a chaplain, and we're part of the brigade chaplain team. And so we get together every Thursday, usually, and we do some kind of training and some kind of connection point. I'm interacting with them all the time. I talk to several chaplains daily that are in this team, and even across the other brigades, I'll contact them. If they got a resource that I'm looking for, maybe I'll try to connect with one of them to have them send me a resource as well. And then we connect with the division, usually about once a quarter. All the chaplains get together. We'll have some kind of chaplain training, and then a time for some fellowship. So there is interaction. There's a lot of interaction. I mean, the chaplain corps is pretty close. You get to know a lot of the chaplains in the corps, especially on active duty. I think there's like 2,000 chaplains in all of the Army. That's the National Guard and the reserves as well. So, but yeah, you get to know people, and again, there's always those lone wolves out there that want to do things their own way by themselves. But I think good chaplains are willing to be team players and work well with others, and seek to encourage one another and improve together.
One of the things, I don't know if the Army uses this term as much anymore. One of the big terms when I worked for the Army was you looking for best practices.
Yeah, best practices, or I think they call it TTPs, which is like tools, tactics, and procedures.
Oh yeah.
So they're looking. We try to improve our. In the chaplain corps, we joke around that there's nothing that's really ever made from new. We always steal each other's stuff, because chaplains are stretched in so many different ways, and there's so much going on that if a chaplain has a really good program, maybe they created it themselves. Chaplains will share that information with other chaplains, because our goal is to minister to soldiers and to improve the lives of the soldiers. I mean, the chaplain corps' motto is taking care of the soul of the Army. And if every chaplain is just in it for themselves and wants to improve themselves by coming up with all these programs but not sharing, well, then they're only looking out for themselves and improving their own soul, right? Are they really looking out for the soul of the Army? So I think most chaplains are willing to share that best common practices and techniques, tools, tactics, and procedures to really care for one another and for the soldiers.
Jeremy, I've got 2 questions. The first is, I understand that if you were to go into combat, you would have a chaplain assistant who, amongst their many roles, would sort of serve as a bodyguard or protective type a person. Do you meet these people ahead of time and train with them ahead of time? Or is that something that would just be assigned whenever, if you ever were in combat?
Yeah, so what we call, in the battalion, there's a UMT is what we call it, a unit ministry team. So there's one chaplain and one religious affairs specialist, and that religious affairs specialist is the enlisted counterpart. So they will do a lot of the logistical side and the administrative side of things that need to be done for the ministry that happens within a battalion. So, they're going to make sure that, we got a prayer breakfast coming up. They're going to try to get the food for it and set up with catering and chapel reserves, so on and so forth, stuff like that. I would be in charge of maybe providing the message and, doing the actual ministry side. But the religious affairs specialist is also, a bodyguard, because they are armed. They do protect the chaplain and the UMT, both of us. They protect us when we're out in the field. So if we go downrange, usually you're going to have a religious affairs specialist with you who's going to be the tactical know-how on the ground, right? They've been trained tactically to maneuver in a combat area of operation.
Very good. So my second question is, and this is a little bit specific, but you also have to report to some sort of a bishop of a diocese for military chaplains, and maintain the Anglican tradition. So what happens, say, if there's somebody of a certain spiritual outlook? I know sometimes different organizations give, you can do weddings or you can't do weddings or things like that. How do you handle situations where there's a conflict, say what a soldier's asking, and yet that you might be ordered to do by the head bishop for the diocese?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, all chaplains provide service or they perform service. And, not all chaplains, I'm an Anglican chaplain. We have Catholic chaplains, Buddhist chaplains, Muslim chaplains. And, if a Muslim soldier were to come to me and want to get married, I would say, okay, that's great. I can't marry you because I'm a Christian chaplain, but let me get you in touch with a Muslim chaplain or someone who can marry you. So that's providing them a service,
Sure.
My responsibility is to ensure that they have religious freedom. So, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, you need to become a Christian or anything like that. That's not my job. I'm not there for that.
Mm.
And their spiritual needs right there in that moment is to be married by a Muslim chaplain. So I'm going to connect them with that. And then, so that's providing. And then performing. If there were a Christian who would come to me, there's certain things that I'm going to walk them through that my diocesan bishop requires me to perform, like premarital counseling. And then we're going to walk through what the rite of holy matrimony looks like, right? What the rite of marriage looks like, what its purpose is, and so on and so forth. And then we're going to do some assessments and make sure that they're compatible, or if they're not compatible, at least explain some of those tension areas. And I think that's pretty standard for premarital counseling. But I'm not really ever commanded to marry anybody. No one has the authority to say, you will marry these people. As a chaplain, I am on loan by the Anglican Church to the Army. So I'm endorsed first and foremost. And so if I break the rules of my endorsing agency, they can pull my endorsement, and then I lose my commission. I'd no longer be a chaplain.
All right. Yeah. It seems like it can be a little tricky, the politics of all of that.
Yeah, you want to be tactful. There's things that you want to be tactful, and you definitely don't want to come at it with in a negative way, I guess. You can definitely dig yourself into a hole and have a hard time getting out of it. So, love all people, provide services when you can't perform them.
That's good.
The basics.
The basics.
That's right. Jeremy, when we get back, you mentioned earlier that this is a year of grace for you, and to fulfill your call, and we want to talk to you after we get back how that is going in this year of trying to obtain grace.
Hi, I'm Peter from Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching, and as you know, I do help people with drug and alcohol recovery issues. I love to help people get better, but I also offer a variety of other services, including regular life coaching services. I've helped several people write and finish a book. I've helped a doctor that was in medical school graduate and then get into a residency. And I also actually have quite a background in mathematics, and I do some math tutoring for the GED as well as the ASVAB for those that are thinking about a career in the military. So my contact information is on the screen. Please send me an email or a text, and we can talk about some of these services and how I can help. That's Peter Grigg at Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching.
Welcome back to the third chair. We have Jeremy Spain and Peter is my co-host.
Merry Christmas!
Yay, he's getting into Christmas. Oh,
The Grinch is coming out.
and his cheeks are turning red.
Yeah, I
See,
slapped him
he's
during the
getting
break.
into Christmas mood. So Jeremy, how, you gave your challenge to get the grace to learn and to start doing the work as an Army chaplain, and how is that working for you? And do you feel like more comfortable, and do you feel you're doing God's work as you go along through this year in the Army?
Yeah, I definitely do feel that I'm doing God's work, that this is what God has called me to do and be. Early on in my career pastorally, I think I questioned that some. But being able to come alongside soldiers is like the bread and butter, the highlight of my week. Walking with them in difficult spaces, being there when it sucks the most, where it sucks the most, offering them different programs and things that will help make them spiritually resilient individuals in their lives, whether it's in the Army or in their marriages and as dads and moms and so on and so forth. Yes, I love it. I mean, I feel like I am really called to this. And one of the things that I find that just affirms this is I absolutely hate physical training, PT. I hate running. I hate push-ups and sit-ups, all of that. And when I was in the Navy, I never did it. Like, I could pass my test, and that was it. I didn't run. I didn't do anything. But here in the Army, I mean, we are doing physical training 5 days a week for an hour and a half, 2 hours. We get paid to do that because as ground forces, you have to be physically fit. And I'm capable of coming in here. I feel like it's a grace of God, that he has given me this grace to come in here and to enjoy it some. Okay, so I don't enjoy it as much as maybe some of these soldiers do. Like the infantry really love the PT, and I'm not at the gym 2 hours extra outside of my day when a lot of them are. But I'll come in and I'll PT with them, and I won't grumble and I won't complain and I won't, I won't skate out of it. I won't go hide in my office because I could. No one's keeping tabs on me. No one's looking, hey, where's the chap? I'm out there with the soldiers because that's where the ministry is. And that's where I feel like I can do the best ministry is just by running with them and PTing with them. And so when I say that, like, this is a year of grace, I mean, that goes across the board. It's not just this year. I mean, I think that's going to be throughout my time in the Navy or in the Army that I have been given this special grace to enjoy PT because that's where I get to minister to soldiers. And that's just one of the areas that I feel affirmed in that area. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it's very good. And somebody wanted to join the Army as a chaplain. How would they go about it?
Yeah, if someone wanted to join the Army as a chaplain, they would want to contact an Army chaplain recruiter. And you can just Google that site here, but I'm going to, they were to go on to Google and type in Army chaplain recruiter. I don't have this information at the disposal here, but you should be able to find an Army chaplain recruiter.
I'll be able to find it and put it on the screen.
recruiting.army.mil.
Yeah, we'll have it on the screen here at the bottom.
Yeah, we'll put it up, Jeremy.
Okay.
I'll be able to find it.
Yeah.
And is there a need for Army chaplains?
There is, yeah. I mean, the Army is always looking for good candidates to come in and come on active duty, reserve, or National Guard as a chaplain. And the great thing is, too, like if individuals are interested in, while they're in seminary, they can join the Army as a candidate, a chaplain candidate. They'll be commissioned as a second lieutenant, and then they will drill on the weekends, gaining valuable experience, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, they're weekend warriors. But as a candidate, they'll gain valuable experience as a chaplain candidate that will actually help them in the long run when they come on active duty, if that's what they so desire, 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
Well,
Version to talk to a chaplain recruiter about the chaplain candidate program.
wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. You've agreed to come back next week, and so we're super excited about that. And we will, again, thank you for being on here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All
Merry
right.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell icon so you know when we have uploaded another episode.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
and
Christmas.
Good night to all.
This is